specializes in neglected tropical diseases. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. All of a sudden, you saw those images, made you feel a bit of a funny way. People react the same way in life when they actually see these things physically for the first time. First off, Doc, let's just try and establish the whole fact. What is elephantiasis or elephantiasis?
Right. Elephantiasis is actually a disease of the lymphatic system. So elephantiasis is actually the common name for it. It is technically or scientifically it's called lymphatic filariasis.
Okay. Now, lymphatic meaning?
I'm going to break it down. Lymphatic filariasis because it is a disease that affects the lymphatic system of the human system. Okay. The human beings have blood vessels, some that transports blood from the heart to the organs or the tissues, and then the system also has a way of transporting the deoxygenated blood without oxygen, back into the heart and the lungs for oxygenation. But in between the system, particularly at the tissue level, the system where blood moves from the veins to the arteries, or from the arteries to the veins, is not the perfect system, such that some of the fluid tends to be left over after the exchange has happened. And so there is that other system that is called the lymphatic system, that is also part of our immune systems, that helps to transport the leftover fluid that accumulates in our system back into the circulation, so that we can get rid of it. And that is also part of the immune system. As I said, it helps us also to fight infections. What happens in this case is that this is the aspect or the part of the human system that gets infected.
Right. The leftover fluid.
The lymphatic system. The lymphatic system. Let me say. So, and that is why that's the part that gets diseased, and that is why it is called the lymphatic system. But the organisms or the parasites that cause the infection are also filarial parasites.
Break it down one more time.
I'm going to do that. They are worms. They call filarial parasites, but they are worms, very tiny worms you and I would not see with our naked eyes. But if you took a sample of somebody who is infected's blood and looked at it under the microscope, you would find it if that person is infected. So that is it. So they are very, very tiny worms that you're not able, and they cause the disease, and they are called filarial parasites. And the system that they affect is called the lymphatic system. So that's how we came by the disease. This name, that is lymphatic filariasis.
All right, doctor, you've used a lot of big words, and I'm like, I'm still trying to get it. All I know is when somebody has elephantiasis, their feet swell up, is big. A lot of times, society doesn't want to go near them. A lot of societies will think it is a curse, all sorts of things. What is it that causes elephantiasis? What is it that, you say it's a worm? How does that worm get into your leg? How does that happen?
The vector, or whatever causes it, is the ordinary mosquito that bites and transmits malaria.
Uncle Mosquito.
Yes. When somebody is infected, the mosquito is able to bite that person, take a blood meal. When that person does that, it picks some of the parasites and is able to pass it on to another person when they bite that person. And so that is how the disease is transmitted.
So mosquito.
The ordinary mosquito that we all know.
Wait, is it then, okay, for me, I generally don't see that much of it in Accra. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. This is just for me. What is some of the statistics around the country as we know of elephantiasis?
Okay. Yes, before I quickly get to that, when the mosquito transmits it to the individual, what the parasites do is they grow in the individual, they multiply in your circulatory system or the blood system, and so they destroy the lymphatics, and so it's not able to transport the extra fluid, the extra from there. So then with time, the fluid begins to build up in your system, and under gravity, that's why we often see it in the feet or in the legs. So the leg gets bigger, every time we have something we call the acute attacks. These are the early stages of the disease. The leg swells up, it gets very warm, it gets swollen. There's remission, or let's say they improve with time, but the leg never really gets to the original size. So every time there is some residual swelling, and so gradually over a period of about 8 years, people develop the kind of legs that, and it looks like the leg of an elephant, and that is how come it's called the elephantiasis. So that's what happens. We're talking about numbers now. Globally, we have about 1.4 billion people globally that live in areas that puts them at risk of lymphatic filariasis or elephantiasis. Out of that number, we have, and these people are found in about 73 countries. Ghana is one of them. So let me come down to Ghana. In 2000, we had some mapping done, and that was when the program to eliminate lymphatic filariasis was actually initiated in Ghana. Right. During that time, and it involves giving drugs. We give ivermectin and albendazole to whole communities. If we come to your community, and we do some surveys to determine if the infection is there. Every eligible person, let me say, once you're eligible for the treatment, you should be given the drugs. And you probably see sometimes these volunteers, or we call them community drug distributors, that carry poles with them because the drugs are given by height. So they move around from household to household, and that's what they give to them. During that period, what we tried to do is also to register all individuals with elephantiasis, so that some other kind of help that is available to help alleviate their suffering can also be offered to them. And throughout the period, over Ghana, we've registered over 5,000 people with elephantiasis, different stages of elephantiasis.
Since 2000 and...
Actually, the registration started sometime in 2005.
2005 to
Right,
date.
to date. And we think that is just the tip of the iceberg, because not all the districts actually reported on this. Those that reported gave us these numbers that we put together and got over 5,000. Again, let me also add that lymphatic filariasis does not only manifest or show as elephantiasis, as we have seen. We also have men that get hydrocele. A lot of the hydrocele that we see around. And that's different from hernias.
Right.
I'm sure you are very familiar with that. Hydrocele are different from hernias. Hernias are due to some protrusion of some of the abdominal content into the scrotum of men. That's when we talk about hernias. But in the case of hydrocele, there is just accumulation of fluid or water, if you put it in layman's term, around the testes. And it gets bigger and bigger over the period.
All right. Just to let you, sorry, Doc. Just to let you know at home that we're actually opening up the phone lines right about now. The number should be on the bottom of your screen any moment. If you want to give us a call, contribute to the discussion, or ask Dr. Berichum a question pertaining to what we're actually talking about, which is elephantiasis or elephantiasis, feel free to give us a call.
Okay.
Right.
Can you only get it in your legs? Because usually the legs, do people get it in their arms or their neck, other parts?
Yes, you can also get it in other parts of the body. You can have elephantiasis of the arm, and in women, some women even have elephantiasis of the breast.
Wow.
It could also affect your genitals, elephantiasis of the vulva. And in the men can also have elephantiasis even of the penis.
Whoa.
And the scrotum, and in that case I'm talking about the skin of the scrotum that gets thickened, fluid, that a small fluid that's different from the hydrocele. And then, as I'm saying, you could also have elephantiasis of the penis. So it can affect almost even in the internal organs like the kidneys. So we probably are missing some elephantiasis of the kidneys and probably treating them as other cases of kidney failure. So it's a disease that we should really not joke with, and it's preventable. That's a good thing.
That's the main thing. Doc, now with this particular worm, let's just say hypothetical, mosquito bites me, takes my worm, gives it to you. How long does it take for that worm to infect you for you to actually know that you will have this particular ailment?
Right. Once you have the infection, let me draw this line or the difference between if we're saying that the same mosquito that transmits malaria is the same one that transmits elephantiasis. Why is it that malaria is so common and elephantiasis is not that common? The difference is the size of the parasites. We like to say parasites because malaria actually is transmitted by parasites. The plasmodium, or the parasites that are responsible for malaria, are much smaller in size compared to the worms that transmits lymphatic filariasis. So what happens in this case is that when the mosquito takes a blood meal, it's able to take in thousands of the malaria parasites, and so it's easier for them to pass. It goes through some further developmental stages in the mosquito before they're able to transmit it to another person. But in the case of lymphatic filariasis, they pick just a few of them, 2, 3, maybe even 5. So the likelihood that they'll be able to go through that kind of developmental stage in the mosquito in order to reach the infective stage that can be passed on to another person is very limited. And so people who get infected need repeated bites of the mosquito before the infection can be established in them. And these are some of the reasons why we don't see them as commonly as but they are everywhere, particularly in the rural areas.
I was going to say, is there a link to say rural areas or say poverty and elephantiasis?
There is.
How is that link drawn?
It's not very easy to establish that because somebody is poor, that's why the mosquito bites.
No, I'm not saying in terms of for it to develop, because maybe if you're in a better position,
you're very right.
You get treated.
You're very right, because when we look at the parts of the country where we find lymphatic filariasis, those are the very remote rural areas where.
Doctor, let me take this call. We have a call from Bulga. Good morning.
Morning, madam.
Please, your name. I didn't quite get your name. Good morning. Please, what is your question or contribution to the doctor?
Yes, I want to start from dog. I want to start from dog whether if one is infected with a cure. And if there is no cure, is there any research that is fine like they're doing in the race about the cure?
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. The answer to that question is that we've got drugs that ivermectin and albendazole that are distributed annually to the areas that we have identified to be endemic for lymphatic filariasis. And these drugs act against the parasites or the worms, the microfilariasis. We've got the adult worms and we've got the baby worms. All can be found in there.
So this is a preventive drug.
Yes. So
stop the.
Yes, it will actually kill those worms.
Okay, great.
It will
prior to getting it, or once you have it.
Once you have it in your system, when you take the drugs, it will kill the worms. But the difference here is that once you have the elephantiasis, that means those structures within your system have already been destroyed.
Right.
So it will never go back to normal.
So that will not reverse that.
Oh wow.
Okay. But it will prevent future.
Exactly. It will prevent further development of the disease. And we also teach people who have elephantiasis how to take care of themselves. There's some rigorous hygiene measures that we teach them. Regular limb washing to prevent further infection.
Yeah.
Because these acute attacks are caused by infections from outside.
All right. Just give me 1 second. We've got Amos from Bronga Half on the line. Good morning, Amos.
Please, not one half for Akokari.
From where, sorry?
I would like to ask Dr. that.
Okay, please go
Am I
ahead.
at high risk of living around the post with such a disease?
Okay.
Right. Again, the answer to that is that you do not get that disease from contact.
So you can't touch somebody and
get it.
That's right.
Again, the challenge here is that for most people, before they show the signs, it takes up to about 8 years or some to 15 years to even get the elephantoid, we even call it the elephantoid limb.